Welcome back. Today we're going to be talking about the area of circles. Our content objective is students will be able to find the circumference and area of circles. Language objective is students will be able to write the circumference and area correctly. Why am I learning this? Well, it's important for many real-life problems such as knowing how much lawn seed is needed for a circular shaped lawn. For background knowledge, let's go ahead and quickly go over the different parts of a circle. Real quick, the radius is any line segment, from the center to the outside of the circle. So this would be a radius. In fact, this would be a radius as well. This would be a radius, and any made line from the center to the outside of the circle is a radius. Now for the diameter is specifically a chord that passes through the center. So this is a diameter because it goes straight through the origin. Okay, what else? Well, this is a diameter here, for example. Okay, and let's see, let's make one more. This would be considered a diameter as well. So understand it doesn't necessarily always have to be from left to right or from top to bottom. Okay. So circumference, just a quick reminder, is the distance around the circle. So this yellow line here indicates the circumference of the circle given. And the relationship between diameter and radius is the following. The diameter is specifically twice as long as the radius. We can kind of even see that here. If we consider this the radius, right, you're going to notice it takes two of them, one here and another here, to make up the entire diameter. Or you could think of it as the radius is half as long as the diameter, like so. Okay, so just a quick reminder as well, circumference of a circle is known as C equals pi times d. So in other words, circumference equals pi times the diameter. Now, typically when we're asked to write things, the circumference as a decimal, what we're going to be asked to use for pi is 3.14. Okay, so in an example like this, it says to find the circumference of a circle with a diameter of 7. You're just going to go ahead and replace the diameter with a 7. You're going to multiply, and you're going to get circumference equals 7 pi. Now, this is in terms of pi, which is nice because you're going to get to the answer pretty quickly. However, if they ask you to write as a decimal, you're just going to simply replace pi with the value we spoke about earlier, which was 3.14. And we're just going to go ahead and multiply, and that's going to be the approximation. So in this case, it's 21.98. One thing you do want to note is pi is irrational, meaning the digits of pi never stop. And technically, this is an approximation because we are stopping the number. We're just calling it 3.14, but there are definitely more digits involved. Okay, so just a quick background knowledge of before. When we found the circumference, we needed to first figure out the different parts. So in this case, we did need a diameter. Since the radius is 5, we want the entire distance, which would mean we would double. This is 5, so this needs to be 5 as well. So the diameter was 10. So to find the circumference, I would use this formula of C equals pi times diameter. So that's pi times 10. So in terms of pi, it would just be 10 pi. However, if I was asked to write it using a decimal, I would go ahead and once again replace pi with 3.14. And in this case, the circumference is approximately 31.4. We do put an approximation because pi, using the value 3.14, is an approximation for pi. Okay, so now that we've gotten practice with that, let's go ahead and learn how to find the area. So here we're given some information. We're given the fact that the diameter is 8. If I were to quickly look at a circle, that means the diameter here is 8. So if I was interested in the radius, I would only want to know what half of this length is, which means if the whole thing is 8, then half of it for the radius would only be 4 yards. So I'm going to go ahead and put 4 yards for the radius. Now for the area, how do we find the area? Well, first let's write down the formula. The formula for finding the area of a circle is pi times r squared, r being the radius. Well, we figured out what the radius, it's 4. So I'm going to go ahead and say the area equals pi times the radius, which is 4. And I'm going to go ahead and square that. So what squared means is I'm going to repeat a 4 2 times. So here we're going to do 4 repeated 2 times. So here, what is the area? Well, 4 times 4 is 16. 16 times pi is just 16 pi. So this is our answer in terms of pi. Now, one thing you want to keep in mind is a shortcut for MyOpenMath. If you want to type in the symbol pi, you simply type in the words pi and it will show up. Okay, so this is our answer in terms of pi, but what if we were asked to write it as a decimal? What do I do then? Well, I'm going to go ahead and use the value 3.14 for pi. It is an approximation because pi is irrational and the digits never end. So I'm going to go ahead and put 16 times 3.14. And I should correct something. It doesn't equal, it would actually be an approximation. Why? Because once again, we're technically using an approximation here. Pi is not exactly 3.14. So I would go ahead and multiply that out, and that's going to be approximately 50.24 yards. And it's going to be squared, okay? Because for area, the units should be squared. So what about the circumference? Let's not forget about the circumference. Now, we need to remind ourselves what the formula for the circumference is. It is C equals pi times D. So in other words, circumference is pi times the diameter. So in this case, we're going to go ahead and say the circumference is pi times the diameter, which is an 8. So circumference is 8 pi. So that's going to be our answer in terms of pi. However, if we were asked to write it as a decimal, I would go ahead and do 8 times 3.14, and that's going to be approximately, I keep doing this, it should be approximately, not equal, 25.12. And here it's just going to be yards. It's not going to be squared. So that is our answer there. Okay, so let's go ahead and try this again. So quickly, what I'm going to do is just draw a quick sketch of the information given. They are saying that the radius is 7. So I'm going to go ahead and mark this as 7 yards. Well, in order to figure out the diameter, I'm going to have to double the radius, which is going to give me 14 yards. Remind ourselves real quick, the area of a circle is pi r squared. In other words, pi times the radius squared. So let's go ahead and fill in the information. We're going to keep pi, but we're going to replace r with 7. So 7 is going to be squared. So what this means is we're going to take pi and multiply it by a 7 2 times. So what does this equal? Well, that's going to equal 7 times 7 is 49. 49 times pi is 49 pi. So this would be my answer in terms of pi. However, if I was asked to write it or approximate it as a decimal, I would go ahead and replace pi with the approximation of 3.14. And this, I'm going to eventually get the hang of it, approximation. It will be approximately 153 and 8,600 yards squared. So depending on the instructions, you need to be prepared to either, one, keep it in terms of pi, or to multiply it out with the approximation of pi is 3.14. Now let's take a look at the circumference. Circumference, remind ourselves, the circumference is simply pi times the diameter. So here, since the diameter is 14, we're going to go ahead and place a 14 here, leaving me 14 with 14 pi. Now, if I was asked to write it as a decimal, I'm going to simply replace pi with a 3.14. So notice here you're going to do 14 times 3.14, and that's going to be approximately 43 9600 yards. So notice with area, we do square the units, but with circumference, we do not. Number 6, it says, this is a picture of a fountain on the south lawn of the White House. The bottom of the fountain needs to be repainted. If the diameter of the fountain is 100 feet, what is the area of the section that needs to be repainted? So what I'm going to do first is write down what I know. They did tell me that the diameter is 100 feet, so I'm going to go ahead and draw that line to represent that this is 100 feet. So in order to determine the area, let's remind ourselves the formula is pi times r squared. I'm going to need to know the radius. Right now they gave us a diameter, so I'm going to interpret it as if the diameter is 100, the radius would be half of that, which would make the radius 50. So now that I have that, I could go ahead and plug in my value into the formula. So the area is going to be pi times the radius, which is 50, and we're going to square that value. So here we are going to have to do 50 times 50, because that's what 50 squared means. And let's do that, 50 times 50. And once we do that, that's going to become 250 pi. Okay, so this is what the answer would be if it was in terms of pi. But since it's asking us for the area in the case of a word problem, it would make more sense to go ahead and multiply it out as a decimal. So I went ahead and replaced pi with a 3.14, and that's going to be approximately 7,850 feet squared. Don't forget to make sure that you square your units because it is area. Okay, number 7, it says a circle has an area of 36 pi feet squared. What is the circumference? What do I do in a case like this? Well, they gave us an area, and the area is defined by the formula of pi times the radius squared. Okay, so here they're claiming that the area is 36 pi, which means 36 pi should equal pi times r squared. Some of you can probably figure it out right now what r squared might be, but I'm going to go ahead and show you step by step what I would do next to solve for r. Since I want to isolate r, I'm going to go ahead and get rid of pi by dividing both sides by pi. By doing so, the pi's cancel out here, but they also cancel out here, which just leaves me with 36 equal r squared. So basically, they want to know what number could I square to get 36. Hopefully, your answer is 6, and I can prove it to you because 6 times 6 is 36. By knowing the radius, I'm going to be able to figure out the circumference. The circumference is pi times the diameter, which means the circumference is going to be pi times twice of the radius. Since the radius is 6, I'm going to claim that the diameter is 12. So I'm going to go ahead and replace the diameter with 12, and I'm going to say the circumference is 12 pi. Now, if I wanted to write that as a decimal, I would go ahead and replace pi with 3.14, and this would be an approximation, which is going to be 37 68/100 in this case, feet squared. Now it is your turn. Go ahead and pause the video and try number 8 by yourself. Okay, so let's see how well we did. So again, you're going to do exactly what I did earlier. You're going to start with knowing the fact that in order to find the area, you're going to do pi times r squared. You're going to replace the area with your 49 pi. And in this case, you can divide both sides by pi, leaving you with just r squared is 49. So what number could you square to get 49? The answer is 7. So now that I know the radius is 7, I could go ahead and plug it into the formula for circumference. The circumference is either you consider it as pi times the diameter or pi times 2r. Since here we have a radius, you can go ahead and use the 2r instead versus the pi d. So here we're going to do pi times 2 times 7, since the radius is 7, leaving us with 14 pi. But I want to estimate it, so I'm going to go ahead and replace pi with 3.14, which should give you approximately 43 and 9600ths feet. So that is our answer. Guess what? That concludes the lesson for today. Thank you so much for tuning in, and as always, until next time, bye!